Dan, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. So if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and introduce yourself as well as your group.
Yeah, Kyle, thank you for having me. My name is Dan D'Amico. I'm a licensed real estate broker and owner of D'Amico Group Real Estate. We have an office in Westchester County in Yonkers, specifically in the Ridge Hill Shopping Center. And then we also have a satellite office on 60th Street in Manhattan, right near the Time Warner building, actually.
Perfect. That's awesome. And Daniel, I want to start before your real estate career. So you served as a firefighter with the FDNY, honestly, which is one of the most demanding and character defining experiences that a person can honestly have. So what does that chapter of your life look like from the inside? And how did the discipline and service mentality that you built at the FDNY show up when you eventually made the move into real estate?
That's a really good question. I thought about this one recently. I guess the snapshot into my life at the time, I'll start when I was a bit younger. My father, when we were very young, my brother and I, when I say we, I have an older brother, who's 2 years older. Our dad was very patriotic. He served in the military 9 years. He earned the rank of Green Beret in the Army. And he was always very patriotic and he loved the fire service. So as a kid, he would bring me and my brother to our local fire station in Throgs Neck. We'd get a chance to meet with the guys. And he had a lot of friends in the department and around the department. And at a young age, it just sort of instilled in me the desire to become a fireman. In fact, I remember my teenage years thinking if I could just be a captain in the New York City Fire Department, my life would be complete. So when I got the opportunity and I took the test about 2 years later, 2.5 years later, the department called and they said, "Hey, you're scheduled to go in." I remember researching, what is this like being a fireman? What are the requirements? How many push-ups? How much I have to run? And that's when the focus really started. I remember every night running 2 miles because I remember it was a 1.5 mile test to get into the academy. And then when you leave the academy, you have to run that 1.5 miles again. So I remember every night doing it. And when I got into the academy, I give a huge shout out to my wife because I went in married. And that worked as such a benefit because my wife was a champion. I mean, I would get up at 3:45 in the morning. You'd had to be on, I believe you had to be at Randall's Island at the training facility at 7. And she would get up early. She would help me make breakfast for myself. And then she would prepare a lunch. And what was so cool is she would always write a little note in there. And it became at lunchtime, I used to open my stuff and, all the guys would be around and they'd be like, "What'd she write? What'd she write?" And I would read it would always have a scripture verse and it always have something encouraging. You're the best fireman, so on. So a glimpse inside my life was a ton of support from my wife and from my household. And also just a lot of mental clarity and mental discipline. I remember thinking, I'm not going to blow this opportunity. I wanted to do this my whole life. I'm going to go for it. And I remember graduating with a 94, and I remember having a 94 overall because at 95, you get on the Chiefs list, and I had just missed that, and I was so disappointed. But I gave it my all. I got a 94, and I became a fireman.
94 is still impressive.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. It was a fun time. I had a blast, absolute blast.
Yeah, it sounds like a great experience. It sounds like those notes that your wife, left you not only motivated you, but also, your teammates and your classmates and academy mates. So that's pretty awesome.
100%.
That's awesome. And then more on your background. So you studied economics at John Jay College of Criminal Justice, which is itself a school built around public service and law. Then you served in the FDNY and then real estate. So that's a very specific sequence of choices. And at what point did you decide that real estate was the place that you could build something meaningful? And then what were you seeing in the industry that made you believe there was room to do it differently?
Absolutely. So when I got into John Jay, I didn't get in the typical way. I went to a private college first, and I started to rack up some high tuition bills that I wasn't very happy with. I knew I wanted to be in a school to study law, and I looked and I saw John Jay was the prime one. Plus, it was a city university, and I was living in New York City, so it would be severely discounted as a lower middle class upbringing. Finances were important when looking at a college, so I knew that I wanted to get into John Jay. So I tried to hit it out of the park in the private school. I racked up some small, in retrospect, some small loans, but got into John Jay. And I was in a speech class, and I remember this because I was petrified of speaking. It was the only class that I would ever walk out of. I think it may have been the only class that I dropped overall. And interesting story. It'll loop back around later in the interview. But I remember being in the speech class, and the person sitting next to me was telling me about she's getting into real estate. And I was like, real estate? That sounds pretty cool. And she put the bug in my head to look into it. She's like, "Hey, go on Groupon. They have a discount, and you can get into the whole thing." And I remember being like, okay, I was a young, impressionable kid. I said, let me see what this means. So it was during college, probably my sophomore year, I would say. that I met her, and she led me into real estate school, and I just sort of fell in love. I fell in love with the opportunity, the fact that once licensed, you have an opportunity to help people build wealth, and be a part of one of the largest transactions. So like, I felt like I was on a path, and then there was a crossroads, and I just sort of said yes. And I'd originally wanted to be a lawyer. That was like my goal of going to John Jay. And I found a path in real estate, and I said, let me run with this. This is an incredible opportunity. You're on the field, you're meeting with people, homeowners, neighbors, helping people lease and buy. It was just so exciting that I just ran with it. And that was sort of my lead into it. It was sophomore year in college when I got my license, and I shelved it for about 10 months and then went back into it probably junior year, and really haven't looked back. But yeah, the second part of your question, seeing things differently, I
Mhm.
got into the business and noticed a lot of people were very comfortable with their level of income, comfortable with how many leads were coming in. And I remember thinking there's got to be a better way than just getting comfortable. What's the best way to do this? And I remember reading old school books about sales and everything, and they would
Mhm.
always say door knocking, meeting people, like the grunt work, the work that no one wanted to do. So I would say I kind of pursued that as a means of getting business. It was the old school, it was the bare knuckle, the hardcore, knocking on doors, meeting people, handing out cars at the train station. And at the time, all the internet leads were the big thing. Everyone was just sitting behind a desk paying for leads, and I was out there knocking on doors, and taking names and handing cards. So I think I wouldn't say I reinvented it, but I went back to the old school, and that really led to a lot of people knowing me and just an incredible opportunity. And when you put yourself out there, I think people respond and they respect that.
Absolutely. And I think that old school approach kind of created some personal level, with a lot of people that you met that sometimes, leads generated by the internet or online don't necessarily give you, right? So I think that kind of also adds another benefit to doing that, going back to the old school method of talking to people, door knocking, that sort of thing, having conversations with people. So that's amazing. No, that's a great kind of
That was great.
lesson. What would you suggest that to somebody who's, kind of looking into getting into real estate and starting out to kind of go out there and talk to people as opposed to just trying to generate leads online or anything like that?
Absolutely. I highly, highly encourage it. In fact, I'm 13 years in the business. Let me not date myself. 13 years in the business. And just a few days ago, we had an open house on Saturday, my wife and I. And this was in the Throgs Neck area of the Bronx, country club, actually.
Mhm.
And the evening before, it was Friday night, my wife and I went door knocking, inviting all the neighbors to the open house. And I ran across a guy who said, I've lived here for almost 30 years now, and I get a ton of pieces of mail from realtors.
Mhm.
But you are the first real estate agent to knock on my door and invite me to an open house. He's like, keep doing what you're doing. I'm not selling at the moment, but if and when, you're my guy, give me your card. And he respected the fact that I was doing the old school way and
Mhm.
door knocking. And I remember looking at my wife and saying, this is why we do this. It's the most in person. In today's world, everything is so disconnected. Although we're connected like digitally, it's so
Mhm.
disconnected personally. So when someone stands on your front step, knocks on your door, and introduces themselves, there's an old level of humanity I think that is reached. So 100%, that would be my. If someone said I'm starting today, what should I do? I would say print some business cards and go door to door. You don't need anything else.
Mhm.
You don't need anything else. Door to door, introduce yourself. You're the local realtor. If you need anything, here's my card, and give it 2 or 3 weeks, and you'll start to see business appear.
Yeah, and I think it's more memorable, right? So if somebody's going to remember you if they come to your door, right, as opposed to just kind of sending maybe an email or however else they, tend to reach out to people. But yeah, no, that's an amazing lesson and piece of advice.
Yeah.
Now I want to look into sort of your involvement with the community, your faith foundation, and what you do for others. So you personally donate 10% of all gross income to ministries across the globe, including RoyalFriend.org in Guatemala, as well as
Yes.
local ministries in New York City too. So that's a significant operational commitment for a brokerage. How does that sort of shape the way that you think about revenue growth and what you're actually building? And then second part to that too, how do clients respond when they learn about that?
Yeah, I think of it as a very simple thing. The Bible says that we should tithe, we should give, we should be fruitful, and I think it's a worldview, I guess you would say. If you look at things through a biblical worldview, you look at the Bible and you say, I believe it to be true, and I believe what's said in here, and then
Mhm.
you try and emulate that to the best of your ability. We're all imperfect, and we're all going to fall short of the glory of God, and the Bible tells us that. However, there are some biblical principles that exist today, and I remember reading and hearing from people that said, my business exploded when I trusted God in it, and my life, I became more financially well off when I was entrusted with more. And what they would say is, if you're given $1 and told to tithe off of that dollar, when you're faithful with the $1, the Lord will bless you with $100, $1,000, $10,000. And it's a biblical thing. It's actually the one time, and I remember my pastor saying this at the moment, it's the one time in the Bible where God says, trust me on this, challenge me on this,
Mhm.
give forth the tithe and see that I won't blow open the doors of the storehouse, meaning like I won't just unleash blessing on you, but do it in faith, give in faith, not begrudgingly. And I remember saying to my wife, it's time that we walk that out. And as we did that, we didn't really have a ton of money. My wife and I really got married. We spent our last $50 to get married. It was funny. Like, we emptied the
Mhm.
bank account for the marriage license.
Mhm.
But as we started to grow, we hit a fork in the road, I would say, when we said, we're either going to do it God's way or our way. And there's no in between. It's either this is the biblical way or this is the world's way. And we decided we're going to do it as the Bible says. And we just simply gave 10%. So I wish there was like a big story around it. But as
Mhm.
we gave faithfully and given first, $1,000 comes in, $100 goes out clean. When we started to do that, we noticed the Lord would expand our territory. As Jabez in the Bible says, Lord, give me the ability, expand my territory. And it was given to him. And I felt the same way. It was almost like a barrier was put around our business,
Mhm.
where when issues would come, they would be dealt with quick and easily. And it makes sense. If you're the creator of the universe and you say to do something, and when your children do that, why wouldn't you bless them? So
Mhm.
it was very interesting. I wish there was more to it, but we just hit a crossroad where we said, hey, if the Bible says to give 10%, we believe this to be true, then that's what we're going to do. And we just watched as our business started to grow as a result of that. And we were
Mhm.
faithful with the little, and we believe that God will bless us with more as a result of that, just being faithful.
Absolutely. And it shows a great commitment, amazing commitment to your faith and also the community as in a global community, right? With your involvement with those organizations and your local
Yes.
churches and all of that. So it's amazing to hear about that. And now I want to transition over to talk to your co-founder. So you and Valerie co-founded this together, and your bio describes marrying her as one of your greatest achievements. She's your business partner, your spouse, and your co-founder. What does that partnership actually look like on a hard day inside the business? And what has building something together taught you about your marriage that you could not have learned any other way?
Wow, that's a really good question. Um, I guess first, yes, I always consider her to be my biggest blessing. As I said earlier, when I was in the fire department, I mean, how many women do you know would wake up at 3:45 with their husbands who are going through the academy
Mhm.
to prepare them a meal, write them a scripture, and prepare breakfast? Just, she was incredible, and that's why I say she was such a blessing. And what I really love about her is that she's always so honest. She's very communicative and very clear minded. So she'll tell you, hey, what you did I didn't like, or hey, what you're doing I love, or hey, I think we're going down the wrong direction. And she's very vocal with that and very upfront, and that has been incredible for me to help lead our company and our household and our family.
Mhm.
um, but yeah, I say that she has been my biggest blessing. But to answer your question more directly, a rough day at the office really results in us maybe on the way home shutting our phone off and saying, you know what, we're done with real estate, because that's always the thing, right? You have to balance being a husband and wife versus being partners in real estate. And in the beginning, it wasn't easy, right? The boundary lines tend to blur sometimes. It's 7:30 at night, and you're like, hey, what happened with that deal? And we have to say, oh,
Mhm.
hang on, the work is done. We take off the realtor hat, and now we're husband and wife again. So there was some growing pains in the beginning of that, but learning, um, and with the help of outside counsel and people who have done it before us and said, hey, this is, and reading books and seeking help in that really has helped us to find a flow, I would say. So hard day in the office is us really just shutting our phones off, and then
Mhm.
going back to being husband and wife. um, and yeah, it's been incredible. It's been a roller coaster, ups and downs, but way more ups than there were downs. I'm incredibly blessed by it.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. I actually want to kind of dive into your business model as well in the Westchester market specifically. So
Sure.
you're operating across the county in New York City, from multifamily brownstones in Brooklyn to penthouses in Manhattan, the Midtown West to townhouses in the Bronx. It seems like a wide range for a team, but what is the strategic logic behind staying that broad rather than going deep into what one submarket? And then how does your team actually maintain expertise across all of it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Our company really started as my wife and I originally. We were what the industry would say top producers, maybe the top 10% of our office at the time. So when we started, I have a background from the Bronx, from the Throgs Neck area. And because of that, because of the roots that I grew there, I continued for my whole career from starting out door knocking to paying for ads and growing my business. I started to get a lot of referral business from the Throgs Neck area. So when we relocated to Westchester and started to grow deep roots in the Yonkers and lower Westchester area, I would continue to get referral business in the Bronx and the Bronx and the Bronx. So that's where like the Bronx and the Westchester County sort of bridge happened. And I actually
Mm-hmm.
met my wife while she was working in the Bronx, but she's originally from the Queens, Brooklyn area. So when
Okay.
she started her business, she really did the same thing. She was a door
Mm-hmm.
knocker, didn't really call much, but just every day at the doors knocking until she found someone who was interested in selling.
Mm-hmm.
So the same was true with her. Well, although we met in the Bronx, she was getting referral business in Queens and Brooklyn, and I was getting referral business from the Bronx. So our Westchester grew to that. And as our team expanded, we decided for 2 years, we moved into Manhattan and decided to grow some roots there. And that's where sort of those old school mentality, the old school principles, door knocking, meeting people the old school way, they pay such residuals long term. So that's really where those multiple markets came from. My background in the Bronx, my wife's background, Queens, Brooklyn, and then us living in Manhattan for about 2 years, a year and a half, and then moving up to Westchester. And because you go the old school way where you meet people in the old fashioned at the supermarkets handing out cards, people respect that and they love that,
Mm-hmm.
especially in today's world. So I feel like that's really what cultivated a lot of these different markets was just being willing to go and doing the grunt work. Now, the second half of that question you asked about our team, we sort of started a brokerage out of necessity. We were getting to a point where our business was growing and we needed help. So we decided to open our own brokerage, take on buyers agents, take on tenant agents to fulfill the tenancies. And that's really what happened. So we train our agents very much in how to provide a high level service to our people. So really it came from the top down. My wife and I being the rainmakers, bringing the business in, and then training our people to help maintain that. We got a listing in the Bronx, listing in Manhattan, listing here, listing there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot of work, a lot of training. We're very big on training. In fact, we like to do one every week. My wife's our in-house trainer, and that's really what it is. It's sprung out of a necessity, and then making sure your people are adequately equipped or over-equipped to handle the business.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that speaks volumes when the founder and the co-owners are making sure that their employees have everything and they have the sufficient training and whatever it may be. That probably means a lot to them, to at least give that to them. Do the agents kind of have like expertise in like their own submarkets, or do they kind of expansively kind of know everything about all the markets, if that makes sense? Do they
It's
kind
very
of
hard. Yeah. It's very hard to know everything, right? Like, so we
yeah.
try and keep people in their specialty. So if we have an agent from Mount Vernon and we get leads in Mount Vernon, hey, work that.
Mm-hmm.
But Mount Vernon is also close to New Rochelle. It's close to Bronxville. It's close to a whole bunch of sub-markets. So we expect our agent not to be a professional in all those markets, but generally know the way around at least those sub-markets. If you're from Westchester, I don't expect you to know Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're from, Red Hook, maybe you should know the surrounding areas too. So we try and really pinpoint our agents that way. Like, oh, you're from New Rochelle. That's our go-to when New Rochelle buyers come or tenants come or landlords. And then, for instance, my wife and I live in Yonkers and we've grown a lot of roots here. So a lot of the local business will handle with some support of our local Yonkers agents. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really about pinpointing and also matching up people's personalities. We're very big on personality because that's what we are when we come down to it. We're creatures of personality, and some personalities clash while others are complementary. So
Mm-hmm.
we've studied that. We've learned each and every one of our agents' personalities, and we like to match them appropriately with the client. So we'll
Okay.
put a strong temperament with another strong temperament, or vice versa, whatever complements one another to make sure the process is smooth. So it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
I don't want anyone to think it's easy, but
Right.
it's
Um,
worth it. It's very rewarding.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Westchester is in a seller's market right now, essentially. So median
Yes.
prices hit $1.1 million in 2025, which is up 17% year over year. So active listings countywide fell to 426 homes at year end, near a historic low. So at the same time, the New York City migration into the suburbs continues. What are buyers and sellers in Yonkers and Greater Westchester not being told right now that you think they absolutely need to understand?
Wow. Hmm. I would probably say that our market, we are seeing a lot of people coming from Manhattan, absolutely, and all of New York City.
Mm-hmm.
As the boroughs become priced out, right? It started with Brooklyn. It was the hottest borough. Everyone wanted to be there. It expanded over to Queens. Then it crossed the border and went to the Bronx. Now the Bronx is getting really expensive. So the Bronx borders Westchester County. So it makes sense to slowly migrate north. What I would let people know that are coming from New York City to Westchester is Westchester does not have much of the infrastructure that New York City does, right? It doesn't have a subway system. You do have the
Mm-hmm.
Metro North, which is an above ground railroad that helps. It's a bit more expensive if you're used to New York City. You pay by how many stops you come. So I think there's a bit of a commuter discrepancy. If you're going to come from New York City, a lot of people don't even have a car in New York City. Coming up to Westchester, it's sort of culture shock in that it's required to have a car in almost most markets, unless you want to live downtown Yonkers, downtown White Plains, and commute from there. But I think if you're from New York City, you can kind of figure it out no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
If
Yeah.
you're a transplant coming from another place, I would say Westchester County is an incredible market, beautiful views all along Yonkers. I'm favorable to Yonkers, of course, because I live here, running for office here. But there's so much that is offered here. It's just sometimes a little bit of a culture shock. It's a little more suburban. So I would say that we have a vibrant community, beautiful waterfronts. We're very welcoming and inviting to all. We encourage more buyers to come out of New York City.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's also wise to know that the market is a little bit different up here in that most people live in a home, in a single multifamily or small apartment building. Whereas if you're coming out of New York City, you may be used to some of the larger high rises. So the type of real estate's a little bit different. And I would say it's a little bit more laid back. But otherwise, I encourage everybody come up to Westchester County, reach out to D'Amico Group Real Estate. We'll be more than happy to help you, especially if you got a place to sell or buy. But yeah, there's really not too much I would say. If you're a New Yorker, you'll absolutely acclimate to the Westchester County suburban lifestyle.
No, it sounds amazing. The way you're describing it, I'm like, you've got me sold. I'm there,
You want to come and buy something up in?
Yeah, I may have to now. Yeah. No, but I feel like too, a lot of people from New York in general are just very adaptive, and that's, to
Absolutely.
your point. Yeah, it is probably a different culture out there, but it sounds amazing. So, appreciate you sharing all of that too. So I want to transition to kind of things you're doing outside of work as well. So you are president of the Toastmasters Westchester chapter, and you actively
Yes.
teach public speaking to industry professionals. So most brokers never think about communication as a trainable skill. And what we kind of talked about earlier, right? Your kind of old school method of going out and talking to people, knocking and talking, going to doors. What have you learned from that work that has changed how you train your own agents? And then what is the single communication mistake you see real estate professionals making most consistently?
Absolutely. This is great. So this is when I said we'll probably come back to this. We'll double back. So when I was in college, I'm telling you, I would get bright red in front of a classroom when it was time to give a speech. And I actually believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was the only class that I dropped. I just said, I'm not taking this. I'll select a different elective. I
Mm-hmm.
would get so nervous approaching the front of the room. There's actually a video on YouTube that is of me at probably 19 years old giving a speech and just turning bright red. It was awful. It was terrible. I remembered the feeling and I thought about it and I said, I don't want to go through life with any weaknesses. I learned in the fire service that weaknesses can get you killed. Now, not knowing how to public speak may not get you killed. More than likely, it's not going to. It's not going to cost you severely. But what if you went through life without any weaknesses, or at least tried to work on those weaknesses? And I remember thinking, this is not an area that I want to be known for. Oh, he's not a good public speaker, but he's great one on one. And the irony behind all this is that my wife was an accomplished public speaker, spoke in front of 2,500 people, got a standing ovation. She's incredible at it. So to have a husband that was very weak at it, it drove me to really get better. And I looked up how to get better, and I found a local Toastmasters club actually in Riverdale, a few miles south of where I'm sitting right now. I'm doing this from my home office.
Mm-hmm.
And I joined, and quickly everyone was like, "You're such a great speaker." And I'm like, I feel like I'm terrible at this. What do you mean? And they're like, "No, you're incredible." And after about a year and a half, from giving speeches and just repetition, getting in front of a room of 15, 20 people, you start to build more and more confidence. And then they said, "We want you to be the president." And it was so humbling because I started in a place where I wouldn't even want to go. I would forget my name in front of people.
Mm-hmm.
And now here they are saying, "No, we want you to be our president. You're great. Let's run with it." So as of July, my presidency is coming to an end here, and we're transferring over new roles. Every year, you could only be president for 1 year of a Toastmasters club. So this was the end of my first one, and I'm gonna take up another position. But it was incredibly humbling, and I think it's incredible because if you could speak in front of, let's say, 30 or 40 people and get your message across, imagine how much more gifted you'll be when you're sitting one-on-one with a homeowner or one-on-one with a tenant, right? You're able to communicate more effectively, more directly. And I think the latter part of your question, you asked, what's one of the biggest mistakes that people make? Body language is a huge one. Sometimes people can turn someone off from themselves. Like if I'm pitching myself, "Hey, why should you hire me, Mr. Seller?" That's a conversation that you have to have, and you have to have it with confidence. And for me, I feel that if you can do it in front of 30 people, one-on-one is easy. And sometimes I would find that you would go to a pitch, a listing agreement, or a listing appointment, and there may be 4 people there. I've been there in front of 4 people. You have to communicate, make eye contact with 4 people. You have to keep them entertained. That's a skill that's learned. And for me, if you wing that and you lose, they say, no, it's not only does it hurt, but it hurts financially too, right? That's an opportunity. This is business. You want to be well with your craft. And it really encompasses everything. You become a better leader that way. You become a better parent because you communicate better with your children, become a better spouse, a better friend, because you're able to communicate more effectively. So the big mistake I see people make is that they sabotage themselves. They over-explain, or the body language is slouchy or just not confident.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas all these little things are building an answer in someone's head. Do I want to work with this person or not? And I think a gifted speaker, a polished speaker, someone who doesn't have a lot of filler words, which are the ums and the uhs and the and the so, those are things that we train in Toastmaster. In fact, someone counts how many times you do that, and they'll say, "Hey, Kyle, at the end of your speech, you did 13 or 6. And I used to watch mine go from 15 to 12 to 10 to 6 to 4. And now they're like, "Hey, I didn't even pick up on one." And I'm like, "I'm sure there was one." But yeah. All this to say, the more that you practice your craft, communication, the basics of humans, that's what separates us from any other species. The fact that we communicate the way we do. Working on that, I think, will make you a better person entirely. Well-rounded as well, being able to communicate.
What is the best way for somebody that may be listening and maybe they're starting out in real estate to kind of, build upon their communicative skills? Is it Toastmasters? Is that how they should do it? Or should they, kind of a combination of certain things like going out and talking to people? What's the best way to approach that?
I always say you should practice when the stakes are not high. So going out and talking to people is excellent. However, if you're in sales, you're risking during the regular season, as you would say, right? There's a reason why they have a preseason. Hey, these games don't count, but they're for us to get better. And that's what I look at Toastmasters as. It's an opportunity, a platform where everyone goes there to get better. And being able to work on your craft and deliver a message on point, I would say absolutely Toastmasters is the place, but even start at your home. It was recommended to me very early on in public speaking that you should videotape yourself. Let's say you're on a phone call, videotape yourself as you're on the phone call. At the end of it, play it back, but don't look at it. Put your phone face down. So now you're only listening and you're going to hear, do I use filler words? Do I use all these things? Then another thing they said was, now watch it a second time, but watch it with the volume off. So the only thing you're going to see now is mannerisms. How are my mannerisms? Am I making a sad face? Am I negative, or am I big and bright? And do I use hand gestures? And then the last time you're going to watch it back is with the volume on and just regular video, because now you would have gotten all 3 aspects: the visual, the audio, and then it all combined. And he said, just doing that a few times, or talking to your kids and videotaping it and then watching it back, you will learn its reflection. Ultimately, you'll learn leaps and bounds. So yes, Toastmasters is number one. Get out there and go to in-person meetings, not online.
Mhm.
Online's great, but you don't get the same public speaking experience as you would in person. So Toastmasters and or do just video yourself at home doing something and watch it back, and you'll learn leaps and bounds very quickly.
Y- Yeah, I was gonna say, I bet you could, yeah, learn quite a bit from just watching yourself speak. Just as simple as that, right? Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you. And then now I want to transition over to conversation about technology and specifically AI. So you've
Sure.
built a relationship first, faith-based, community-driven brokerage at a time when the industry is being flooded with AI lead generation tools, automated listing platforms, and essentially digital-first models that promise to cut out the agent entirely, which we all know won't happen. But where do you think technology actually helps a brokerage like yours? And then where does it actively work against the thing you're trying to build?
Yeah, so I'll start with answering the latter half of that. I think where it hurts is it continues to disrupt the person to person experience. When you have to go through an AI to ask who is the best real estate agent in the area. Now, on the surface, it sounds like it would be great. It can compile a lot of info and it'll make a decision for me. But these are the very things that make us human, right? The ability to seek somebody else, another human that is good at a craft, and interview them and determine if you want to do it. We run the risk of putting so much reliance on AI that we can be dismayed, we can be led astray. We don't know what's programmed into AI. Are they choosing arbitrarily? Are they choosing because Nancy down the road pays the most to ChatGPT, or she has a pro account and I don't? So they say Nancy's the best. There's so many things left up to chance where I think that interpersonal, that person to person relationship is really where these things build. So I think that's the possible negative side effect. It's the same thing like when all the social media came out. It could be amazing for most people, but I feel like connection from person to person has dwindled away since the rise of social media. Why is that? We're more connected. How can it be? Because I think there's something to meeting someone face to face over coffee rather than quick typing, happy birthday, hope all is well. No, let me
Mhm.
take you out for a meal. Let me chat with you face to face. We're still humans and we still crave that. Now, where I do think that there is a place for it is with data and research. I've in the past used ChatGPT and Grok and even Claude more recently to help analyze statistics and trends. Hey, which way is the market moving? Analyze Zillow's sale records or New York City sale records for the past 5 years, and let me know if you think it's a buyer's market or a seller's market. Right. So those are things where it's not arbitrary. It's not left to chance. Who's the best agent? Those are kind of things that are left to chance. What are the metrics they use? We don't know. But when you say, hey, study the statistics, the sales statistics of 10465, a zip code in the Bronx, are they trending upward? Or are they trending downward? Those are numbers that can't be lied or skewed or misinterpreted. It's either the sales are going up, the sales are going down. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity there. And think the biggest one, if you talk to any real estate agent right now, I would say probably most of the industry is using some sort of AI to write descriptions. And you see it a lot in
Mhm.
many listing descriptions. You see them, these big, wonderful words. And I think that there's a little notch in credibility when you see those. I know for me as an agent, when I see another agent completely rely on AI, to me, it's like a little strike. I'm not saying that it's necessarily the wrong thing,
Mhm.
but it's just like, for me, it's a little letdown. Use it to enhance things, but not fully rely. Hey, write me a description for this, that, and that. Go. No, hey, here's my description. Show me where there's some weaknesses. These are the things I want to highlight. Like you could be more thoughtful with it. And sometimes you could just see people go very quickly through it. And it's always bothered me in this industry when people take it for granted anyway, because it's a huge deal. It's someone's home. Someone
Mhm.
spent years and memories and hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars in our neck of the woods now. So those are sort of the pros and cons that I see of the AI revolution in real estate.
Right. To your point too with the descriptions, I was talking to somebody yesterday actually about it too, and they use it as like their own creative outlet essentially because they liked writing and reading and that sort of thing. So they were, very much against using AI for description. But to your point, you can definitely use it to kind of spruce things up or
Yeah.
add to something that's already built. And I just hope that people don't kind of walk away or entirely from that personal touch that you should have on things like that, like listing descriptions and what have you. But yeah, agree 100% with that. So AI is being used across the real estate industry right now for market analysis, like you mentioned, even
Sure.
pricing recommendations, client follow-up automation, and they even have virtual staging as well. Um, where do you think AI fits into a model where trust is the actual competitive advantage, and where do you draw the line?
Wow, that's a tough question. Um, Personally, I draw the line in anything outside of like I mentioned, statistics, analytics. I'm absolutely for it when you're reviewing a neighborhood and saying, "Hey, is Hell's Kitchen trending upward or downward? And what is the average price of a two-bedroom based on XYZ, these statistics?" Where I think boundary lines should be drawn is I feel like there's no repercussions to misinformation. I remember I had a conversation with someone recently and they were writing some sort of speech. Maybe I think it may have been Toastmasters, and they had mentioned Charlie Kirk's death in it. I know that's a contentious area, probably an area that divides a lot of people, but I'm only bringing it up for factual reasons. He
Mhm.
typed it in there. He wanted to mention it. And the AI spit back to him, "Hey, you may want to be cautious with this because Charlie Kirk is actually still alive. And there's no record of his death." And I'm like, wait a second. We're almost nearing a year
Mhm.
since his public assassination. How can this AI say that? And he had to go back and forth with it 3 or 4 times where I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I was mistaken." And I'm like,
Oh,
wait
wow.
a second.
Yeah.
That's like a huge, what do you say, glitch in the matrix there, right?
Right.
Like,
Right.
how much
Yeah.
information are we getting from them that is incorrect? And I recently read about a attorney who drafted up a whole thing through a whole response to an allegation or to a court case with AI, and it had sites in there. It was citing cases, whatever, versus United States, and this one versus Kyle and Dan, and all
Mhm.
these cases, and it made an argument. And the judge looked at it and said, "Wow, there's all this case law, okay," and ruled in his favor. And the opposition, the other attorneys, reviewed all of it and found not only was it used through AI, but the cases that it cited were made up.
Oh,
They didn't even exist.
mhm.
There wasn't a Kyle v. Dan or whatever the things were that it mentioned. And I thought to myself, this is now kind of scary, right? What repercussions were there to this misinformation, right? It it,
Mhm.
it created something, and then an attorney relied on it in open court, and he almost, I don't know what the repercussions were, whether he lost his license, but it was very harsh. I remember reading the article, and then there's even a video of it, and I
Mhm.
was like, wow, is this the beginning of something where artificial intelligence can be manipulated or it could just think on its own and create cases out of thin air? What if it created comparables for me and said, well, this building sold for this, and how can you know?
Yeah.
So we have to be very careful in that respect. And I think there should be some legislation around accuracy.
That's a good point. And also to your point too, I think there should always be a human oversight at some point when you're using AI just to be cautious of it. I'm a hobbyist when it comes to coding and I use a lot of codecs and cloud code and that sort of thing. And sometimes it steers me in the wrong direction. I have to tell it,
Yeah.
hey, you advised me to do this, but it actually, I found it going through this route. And it's like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, I always wonder like how many times these AI LLMs are just like kind of spitting out information and people are just taking it, like to your point too about the lawyer in court, just kind of using that and running with it, assuming
Yeah.
that it's all accurate. So I think that human oversight's extremely important with this type of stuff. Um,
Sure.
yeah, absolutely. Now I want to focus the conversation on your political campaign. Super exciting to read about and hear about. So you've spent years in this market watching what actually drives housing affordability and what works against it. Now you're stepping into the political arena to try to do something about it. What was the moment you decided that was the right move? And then what does a real estate professional bring to that conversation that a career politician simply cannot?
Great question. I have always loved politics, probably from the time that I was maybe 16 and old enough to watch the news and read. And
Mhm.
coming from a patriotic background, my father serving in the military and I'm being a fireman, I really enjoyed reading things on the Constitution, the Federalist Papers, and really digging deep through our founding documents and our history. And it really led me to want to get into politics at some point. Now, I grew up Italian, and Italians are known for their Sunday dinners. And
Mhm.
it was always so hilarious to me because as a kid, all the adults would start to talk and bicker back and forth, and the taxes, and I would solve this, and I would solve this. But there was never any action. It was a lot of talk. And at the end of it, oppositions would, cooler heads would prevail, and they say, you know what, I see your point. Yeah, it does make sense. The mayor should do that. And it seemed like we could figure out all the issues at the kitchen table. By the end of Sunday dinner, the meatballs were out, we're eating, everyone was in agreement. So I thought about it and I said, this is great on a molecular level, right? Microscopic level. Okay, the family agrees. But what is that doing to the body politic? It's doing nothing. Unless you get out there and perpetuate a change and make your voice be heard, get on your soapbox and start preaching to the choir, to the people, it's not going to make a difference. So I thought to myself, me sitting and knowing all this knowledge and whether this person's right or this legislation, it does no good if you're not willing to get out there and make a change. And I saw time after time, especially in local politics, people would run oftentimes unopposed, which means Kyle's the elected person and no one challenges him, which means Kyle wins again, right? And year after year, Kyle would win. It's just an example. But unless there's another voice that steps up and says, hey, people, I think this way and this way and this way, and this is why you should follow me, we're never going to get a change. So that was really what pushed me over when I said, hey, I'm tired of sitting on the sidelines and just figuring things out on my own. Hey, if the mayor did this and if the county legislator did that and the county exec and the president, whatever. If you're not willing to get in the game, then you're not going to effectuate any change. So that was my motivation. It was like, hey, now or never. And I think where I come in from a real estate background is the biggest issue in New York City is, well, two things, or in the New York metro area, Westchester County also, affordability and housing. Those are the two biggest things. Who better than someone who has spent 13 years in and around the housing industry to effectuate policy on housing, right? Mm-hmm. We continue to see, especially in many areas of Westchester, Yonkers, luxury rental buildings being built. Now, that's great for the developers. It's even sometimes great for local politicians because look at our city. It looks beautiful. But when you crack open the books and look at the numbers, you start to realize that thousands of apartments are being built, but no one can own them because they're all rentals. And then you look and some county money and city money are being given to these developers to build apartments that most people can't afford. Like, for instance, across Yonkers, a studio apartment is probably around $1,600, maybe $1,500 in a private street. When you go to downtown Yonkers in the luxury buildings, the studios start at $2,100 and they work up to $2,300, $2,400. A one bedroom's over $3,000 and two bedrooms touch $4,000, $4,200. These are not regular working people that are doing these. These are high income earners. So when you continue to build all these beautiful apartments and given taxpayer money to do it, that's when you say, hey, there's a problem here. We're creating a bigger issue. The housing market is going to continue to skyrocket because you're building supply, but you're just not selling it. You're only putting it for rent. So what happens when the couple wants to buy a two-bedroom condo? Oh, yeah, sorry, they're all rentals in downtown Yonkers, which means the two-bedroom condo miles up the road is now worth more because there's 10 people who want that one condo instead of, 5. So all these buildings that are coming up in downtown Yonkers and across Westchester, if we would just allocate 10 or 15% or 20% to be sold, hey, you want some taxpayer money? Well, we need more housing. We need housing that people can own, build a legacy, grow roots. They got to go up for sale. Otherwise, build it on your money. I got nothing against a private developer building a building as high as they want. Whatever the city says, go for it. But when you take taxpayer money, that's when my policy comes in and says, hey, we need to own some of these. If you're going to get taxpayer money or a tax break or anything, we're going to waive some property tax. Whatever the case is, there better be some units for sale. Otherwise, we're going to find ourselves in an even worse housing crisis because there's only going to be apartments for rent and no one can own. And I'm not a fan of that. I think homeownership is an incredible thing. People build roots and they actually take care of the neighborhood better, right? When you have lifetime renters, and if you choose to rent, there's nothing wrong with that. But historically, the neighborhoods are not as kept up with as someone who owns, right? You own the property, you're more likely to go outside and clean the garbage. If you rent, you're like, whatever, it's not my house. See you later. And we've just noticed that. So we want to increase home ownership so that people feel more of a community. Hey, I own this property. This is my property. Don't litter in front of my property, right? But if you're a renter, whatever, this is the landlord's building. I'm not.
Right.
Yeah. His problem.
And I think that's a community driven type focus, which you'd mentioned before community, but like it's way more for the people, right? And essentially for the community. That's 100%. I agree with that. That's a great point. Great point. Real quick too. So you went from FDNY to real estate to running for elected office now. So there's a clear thread running through all of it, which is public service. And you also mentioned your father too, as well, serving in the military. Now, what does winning this seat actually mean to you? And then what is the first thing you would fight for if you got there?
I've said from the beginning, I've told my family and I've told my wife this because she's like, "You sure you want to get into real estate?" I'm sorry, into politics. It could be dirty, and people can come after you, and maybe not physically, but at least come after your name. And I
Mm,
said, "Well, if not me, then who? Right? If not now, then when?" Right? To take some biblical context, it's like, okay, God, send me. Winning this seat would mean that the people of Yonkers, the people of my district, have somebody in there now that is not there to build their resume, not there as a stepping stone, or who's on a political journey and this is just the first best rung. That's not what this is about. I don't necessarily I don't seek this job as any credential or anything. I just see a need that needs to be filled. So I want people to know that once elected, what this means is that the people of Yonkers now have an advocate. I've already made it public too that I would commit to having multiple town halls per year, which is when you come back to your district, you open up let's say an auditorium and you invite everyone in, and there's the political leader, the politician. In this case, it would be me once elected. Ask me any questions. I'm here. It's called the town hall in politics,
mm.
where the local politician comes and anyone can come up to the mic and ask a question. And I just find that that's so missing, right? Like, when was the last time you saw your local politician say, "Hey, come on by, ask me questions, legislation, this"? I want people to know that once elected, it's not about me. I have a very clear framework. Does this benefit the people of District 16 Yonkers? Yes? Great. Then I'm for it. If the answer is kinda, then let's work on it. If the answer is no, then sorry, I'm not voting for it. It's a very clear framework. Does this help the majority of people? Because it's impossible to help everybody, right? Like, we seek to help 100%, but sometimes 95% is a win.
Mhm.
So for me, does this help the most people? And I think building property that people can own, lowering taxes, shifting the burden away from commercial landlords, and sharing and really going through the budget too. This is the big one. When you go through the budget and you see how much waste is out there, it's unbelievable. It would be a
Mm,
whole nother podcast if I told you how much I found in the Westchester County budget.
mhm.
But that aside, I just want the people to know that they would have an advocate, someone who's genuinely there with a framework of, does this benefit the most people in my district? The answer is yes, I'm for it. The answer is no, let's work on it, or I'm just going to stand against it.
Right.
So that's the big thing.
Yeah, love it. And I feel like unfortunately, a lot of elected officials kind of overlook that aspect of what's truly good for the community, right? That's what we should focus
Sure.
on. Um, so yeah, no, appreciate that. Thank you for sharing that. And then, so the last question here. So you built a company called D'Amico, which means friend, on the principle that the client is the referee in a bare knuckle sport with no referees, right? So what does that look like at its absolute best? Is there a client story where that philosophy proved itself in a way that you still think about?
There's one that comes to mind, and it was in the Bronx. And what I mean by that is, yes, the truth is there are some guardrails in real estate, but largely because everyone is independent contractors, it can sometimes feel like the wild, wild west. And I can tell you, having worked in many markets in New York City, Manhattan is like top tier. What I mean is, you run into top quality professionals, people who are just running beautiful, excellent businesses, ethical. Not everybody, but I've noticed that that's way more of a standard. And then as you bounce around to different boroughs, things get up in the air and they get a little wild. So that's where, like, sort of the bare knuckle sport came from. There's an old saying that it's like a survival of the fittest in real estate. You got to be a shark in this. And I genuinely don't believe that. And the story that comes to mind was, my wife and I went on a sales pitch in the Bronx with a great family. I want to say they were maybe Polish. And in the meeting, they had said, "Hey, look, we're interviewing another person. They're going to be coming shortly." And the doorbell rang shortly after that. We weren't done with our pitch, but the other agent had walked in, and we saw him walk past, like, the door. It was a two-family home, so we walked past the first door and went upstairs, and we noticed who it was, and it was the most ruthless shark of all real estate agents. And ironically, he did a ton of business. He really did. But if you ask anyone in the Bronx about this guy, and I'm not going to name him just out of respect, but he's notoriously difficult to work with. You'd reach out and say, "I have a client." He's like, "Oh, we're not showing it. You're not showing it." So,
Mm,
like, his statistics were he represented the buyer and seller on almost every property because he just didn't share with anyone. And I mean, technically that's illegal, right? You should do what's best for the seller.
mm,
So I thought about it. And at the end, the seller called us and like, look, we really loved you guys. We work with you a lot, but I think we're going to go with this other person. And my wife and I said, look, if you want to go with this other person, fine. Or if you don't want to go with us, fine. But please, this other person has an incredibly rough reputation. I want you to know what you're getting into. We will recommend 4 other top realtors. If you don't want to work with us, here's 4 other top realtors. And we gave them people that we knew, people that just had a good reputation. Here are the other 4. Feel free to call them. And they said, wow, we've never had somebody do that. Like you didn't bad talk them. And I said, there's no need to. And when they reached out to the agent they were planning on hiring, the ruthless one, and told him, you know what, we're going to go with these people. He replied back like, those are stupid agents. They're terrible. Like he kind of showed his true colors. Mm-hmm. And at the end, the client, the seller ended up hiring us and said, you know what, because of your openness, your honesty, you didn't talk negatively about the person. You simply said what their reputation was, and you offered us 4 other alternatives. We realize that you guys are the ones that we want to work with. And that's what I mean by bare knuckle. There's no ref in there. The ref comes down to the owner of the property. Who do I want to work with? Do I want to work with the ruthless shark, which many people in the Bronx did? Or do I want to work with people who are genuine, who are, people of honor? And in that circumstance, they chose with us. We sold the house for over asking. And, they saw the gentleman's true colors, and they were like so grateful, and they're longtime clients now. And it was interesting how that happened. But that's what I mean by bare knuckle. It can be very ruthless, and there's very few laws that you can really get somebody on. Is it really illegal to be rude or to be a jerk? Absolutely not. You could do that. And that's what I meant by, the referee is the client. So that was a story that I remembered going up against the shark in New York City, in the Bronx. And the client ended up going with us, longtime client, and amazing people.
And I feel like too, I mean, in that particular story, right? Like honesty goes a long way, right? You're forthright with them. You're telling them completely honest, hey, up front, this is a reputation. And like you mentioned, I mean, that's such a great approach to just kind of give them other recommendations as well. You're not saying, hey, come with us, right? It's like, here are some other options if you'd like. And I think that creates loyalty too with your clients. That's a great approach. So Dan, where can people find you at? Social media, in terms of, websites, and then also for your political campaign too. Where can people find you?
Yeah. So D'Amico Group, thedamicogroup.com, thedamicogroup.com is where you can find us for anything real estate related. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube for my political stuff as D'Amico for Westchester. That's D'Amico, DAMICO for FOR Westchester. I try and put up videos almost every day at this point. We're putting out a lot of political content. And my website for politics is electdandamico.com. And if anybody lives in the Yonkers, District 16, which is sort of central Yonkers on the west side, anyone lives in that district, reach out to me. I'd love to meet you guys. I do a lot of door-to-door, meeting a lot of people. That's where the real estate sort of overlaps. So now for politics, I'm knocking on doors, introducing myself, handing out my pamphlets. And follow me on social, D'Amico for Westchester, or electdandamico.com. And if you're in the area, November 3rd is our election, and vote Dan D'Amico. I'll be on the conservative and the Republican line.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dan. I appreciate your time today. It was a great podcast and conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. I appreciate you having me.